Hello everyone, it's been a while since the last video. Nothing much has changed, which is why there's been less posting, but here's an update on the account. So we're sitting at 288,000 in the account, and currently total money in, we added some more money, so now total money in is $201,000 with a total portfolio return of 43% all time and $87,000. Over a year, it's 33% and 72,000. Year to date 2024, it's 54,000 and 23% return. For the past 3 months, only 4%. 1 month, we're down 0.5%. Past week, down 1%. And this is what it looks like as of today. So, give you guys an update. I've allocated and sold all of my other bets, right? Other investment theses, given the current recessionary environment we're in. There's a lot of stagnation within the markets, especially the job markets within the United States. So there seems to be a lot of capitulation before the political elections for presidency in November. No one's really sure what to do, so I sold out of everything to de-risk the portfolio except for Meta. I think Meta has the strongest conviction in my portfolio, so I kept those positions, and I think I've added 100 more shares to get it to 400 shares. What's the conviction? So I thought I would use this video to give you guys an overview of how to think about investing, how to think about, or how I think about investing, and what factors I look for within a company to invest in. And I've narrowed it down to Meta that meets all those criteria. So here I will show you my very basic and simplistic thought process. All right. So if you look at Meta, we have 208,000 in Meta. The rest is in cash and some straggling items, as well as some $4,000 in Bitcoin. But for Meta, the key point in any market industry research you're going to do to find a stock to invest in is to look at the company's gross margin. The reason why you look at a company's gross margin is because ultimately revenues need as revenues grow and your gross margin is large, then you have more room to spend on operating margin, or spend on improving operating margin. So you have more room to invest in marketing, sales, and other things that would improve the business. So the first thing you can use is a stock screener such as Finviz, which is what I use. And if we just go through the exercise together, if we look at Meta Platforms, you can see the weekly chart, the monthly chart. So ever since 2023, when it hit, or 2022 when it was the all-time low of 90 or 80 bucks a share, up to 500 bucks a share. The reason why it was so low is because even though they had pretty good gross margins, which was about still 80% gross margins. In fact, it almost hit 90% back in 2022 and 2023. The market didn't care because they sold it off because they were spending a lot in terms of operating margin. So they were spending a lot on Reality Labs, on CapEx expenditure. They're spending a lot on the Oculus VR headsets, which was not profitable. So the investors, institutional investors, sold all the way down to 80 bucks a share, right? So, but the gross margin was still 80 to 90%. So the reason why you look at gross margin, which is right here, this line here, 81%, is because in 2022, their gross margins remain the same. They sell ads, which has low cost of goods, so like it's a low cost good, right? You literally put it on the internet, on Instagram Reel. You scroll up, you see an ad. If you click on it, the advertiser pays Facebook $2, and basically there's no expense to Meta for each ad. The only expense is cloud service costs, right? So 81% of that $2 goes to gross margin, goes to Meta, and then 40% is operating margin. So everything after you pay your marketing team, your sales team, or your engineers, right, for operating margin, then 40% of your $2 goes to is profit-ish, right? And then after that you have some other extra expenses, interest expense or whatever. Then you get 34% pure profit, which is cash in hand, right? And on this 34% you pay taxes. So out of this 34% of those $2, so right, so that's like 60 cents, right? So that you pay taxes on that, then you can also pay dividends out to shareholders, right? But the reason why this is so good is to have high gross margin is because in 2022 their operating margin was a lot lower. Why? Is because they spent a bunch on Oculus, Ray-Ban smart glasses, but as they've made more efficient moves by laying off 20,000 workers, software engineers making 300 grand on average, right? Then their operating margins went from, it could have been, I don't know how much it was, but maybe 20%, and went back up to 40% because they laid people off and they battened down the hatches and spent less money on, Reality Labs, and now their stock is back. But this is only possible if your gross margin is high. So that let's make that clear. If it's only possible if you have enough room for you to cut those expenses, right? If your revenues are fixed and your gross margin is only 20%, then you can only cut so much expenses to get your operating margins up, right? So that's the key first step, is to look at an industry, look at a company with high gross margins. Now the second thing, high gross margins invites competition. Why? Because other companies will want to eat part of your market share because you have high gross margins. And if you look at commodity stores, let's look at Costco. They sell food. They sell food and things that people buy at the grocery store. And at the end of the day, the consumer really only cares about one thing when it comes to buying groceries and feeding their family, buying bicycles to have for their kids, whatever. They care about pricing and they care about the lowest cost. So their gross margin, they're competing with Walmart, they're competing with Sam's Club. Their gross margins is very low, 12%, right? And within that, they can only make a profit of 2% after the 12% gross margin. So you're looking at an industry where there's not a lot of room for the company, the management, the CEO to cut costs. Even if they cut costs, they could probably only get 2.8% to maybe 3.2%, right? And at the end of the day, if they cut costs, that's a poorer experience for the customer, right? If you go to Costco, they might say, okay, no more samples. We don't want workers to pay them hourly by 18 bucks an hour to hand out samples anymore, because we need to cut costs. So that increases their operating margin, but it reduces customer experience, and therefore it might eventually reduce their total revenue, their total sales number. And if the total sales number is lower and you multiply it across the operating margin, even though the operating margin is slightly higher now, you still have a smaller revenue number, so it makes no difference. You might even be losing money, right? So that's one thing. And so what you need to do is look for, and the reason why they would want to cut those costs is because they're competing with Walmart. They saw, okay, Walmart's selling their chicken for $4.99. Our rotisserie chicken currently sells for $5.99. We should meet them. We should sell our chicken at $4.99 as well, right? If they do that, there's competition from different players, and it's very easy for them to lower their prices. So you need to look for moats. That's the second point of this topic of finding a good investment. So what is a moat? It's something that's not easily replicatable by a competitor or a new entrant, right? So what's the moat of Meta? Why can they keep their 81% gross margin? Why is it so high, and why hasn't it been reduced? Is because they're in the business of selling. They're in the business of hosting a market to sell an audience to marketers, right? That's their business. Their business is to sell attention, right? So you can watch your dances on Instagram Reels, you can watch your food crawls on Instagram Reels, and every other swipe up, you're gonna get an ad for jewelry. You're gonna get an ad for athletic greens. You're gonna get an ad for Fabletics for clothing. You're gonna get an ad for Nike. You're gonna get an ad for protein powder, right? Okay, you're into bodybuilding. You keep scrolling. You keep scrolling. You say, oh wow, this guy is benching 250, and he got it up to 300, right? And then the next ad you see, it's Vital Proteins. Okay, so they are able to market directly to the target audience, and the reason they're able to do that is because users are comfortable giving their data for free to Meta, right? Every swipe you do, every extra second you watch one reel over another is data that tells them this guy's interested in lifting weights. This girl's interested in jewelry, etc. And because they know this, they can say, okay, if they're interested in jewelry, they might be interested in fashion. So we'll also send them some advertisements related to clothing, dresses, wedding dresses, etc. So their market is data. Their market moat is the ability to have extra data on a individual so they can target audiences. But their major reason why they are doing it better than others or capable of having this market and no one else can enter this market and replicate it, besides Google, which does it via search ads, is because no other platform has a social graph. So on Instagram, a lot of people say Instagram is where you would add all your friends, not Facebook anymore, right? It used to be you like people and poke people on Facebook, but that's the boomer generation's use case now. People on who are older than 50 use Facebook to see their old friends. Nowadays, the people under 40 and under 50, they use Instagram. And teenagers also use Instagram and sometimes Snapchat, but Snapchat doesn't have, I don't know, it's more niche. Okay. So we'll ignore Snapchat for now. They're not taking too much market share from Instagram because, as far as I know, Snapchat is too niche in terms of the age demographic, and users of Snapchat when they grow older, they kind of stop using it and they move on to Instagram and Instagram Reels because everyone has Instagram by that time, right? Um, So the social graph is important because if my friend has it and they're sending reels to other friends, and I see that my friend is looking at a reel that was sent by Bobby, who's also my friend, but I don't have Instagram, then I'm gonna go get Instagram because I don't want to feel left out, right? So that's one moat. The other moat is just the fact that if one person has it, people will want to see how your life updates because most people post they're getting married, so their wedding photos will be on Instagram. So they'll want to connect with their social peers. So Instagram is that new platform. Well, it's a pretty old platform, but it's the latest one and the only one that's really relevant, right? So that's one thing. So those are two modes. So the first topic was you need high gross margins and you need it to be protected by a moat. And that moat for Meta platforms is the social graph, right? You're friends of this person, which you could also be friends with this other person. Every person is kind of linked by 6 degrees of freedom, which means if you go down 6 people, you'll eventually know someone, right? If you're friends of a friend friends of a friend, friends of a friend 6 times, you'll probably know, you'll likely know them in some capacity. So they have that graph on their platform. Now, the next step is after you do all this. So those are the two qualities I look for. Then you just listen, you just read their earnings calls and their transcripts. So this is the latest call for Meta Platforms. It starts off with Zuck telling them how they did. They are reaching 3.2 billion people, so they have a huge social graph. A lot of these new people coming from India. One of the fastest growing markets is India. And you got to understand what you're looking for in these transcripts is how the CEO thinks, how the managers of the company think. And from these calls, what I've gathered from my notes is that he's still focused on growing the people, number of people using it. So the social graph, which is the biggest moat, which is great. That's number one. Number two, and he has a logical way of doing it. He's targeting the fastest growing markets, which is India, right, with over 1.3 billion people. WhatsApp is very big in India, and they're growing the modes by increasing use cases by creating threads, which is the pretty much a copy and paste of Twitter, but it links to your Instagram account, right? So that's another thing. So they're tackling India, and then they're also tackling Africa, right? So the continent of Africa, they're making major investments in businesses there by giving them WhatsApp. Like everyone's using WhatsApp in Africa because they're primarily using Android phones and cheap phones from China. So Android is the major player. No one's really using iPhone or iOS in Africa. So WhatsApp is a big deal for Facebook or for Meta, sorry. And then why are they targeting Africa? Well, their populations are growing. Their average age is around 30 for their populations, whereas the other countries that are more developed are much older, right? And then targeting Africa, they also pretty much help connect their internet. So Meta has made major investments in interconnectivity within that continent. So they help with servers there. They help build, literally the lines, the fiber optic cables that connect Africa to other continents. So Meta is just growing it fundamentally by increasing internet access there, right? So that makes sense. And it's not for altruistic reasons. It's because they want to increase the number of people using Facebook apps. Okay, um, that's how business works. Now AI is very hyped right now, and I'll be honest, Meta AI is kind of boring because its use case for an everyday user is okay. It's not life changing yet, right? If you're a creator, you can imagine a image or a photo, but how often do you use that AI feature? Not often on a daily basis. But it's nice to see that they're able to use it to help with their algorithms for delivering advertisements, right? So that's their major business. All right, so the next step is to read all this stuff and see how they're doing and how they think, right? And if you believe that what the way they're thinking makes sense and you think it can actually benefit the company and grow revenues, then you would have a better conviction to invest in the stock. So those are the two steps. So you look for gross margins, you look for a competitive moat, then you read their earnings calls to make sure it aligns with how you think the company should be operating. And if it does, you could be comfortable to invest, right? So yeah, so that's the market update on the portfolio. If you like and you want more insight on how I invest, how I think, feel free to subscribe or comment. Let me know what you want to learn more about. And of course, this is just FinViz, right? I don't think you don't have to use it, but this is my link right here. If you do ever get like a FinViz Pro account, all it does is give you more accurate and more basically you get real-time quotes, intraday charts, and advanced charting tools for trading. But yeah, so that's an affiliate link that I'll leave in the description box. Um, Hope everyone learned something from this video, and have a great day.